Hello everyone, and thank you for joining our Reigniting Your Creative Practice workshop hosted by Clio Collective. In this event, we'll hear from three fascinating women who are both artists and educators. Jody Boyer, based in Omaha, Nebraska, Abigail Hammond, based in London, UK, and Jen McGowan in Vancouver, Canada. Each artist will share their story and discuss some examples of their work produced before and during lockdown. The aim of this workshop is to use the power of storytelling to foster a creative community and to inspire others to begin making work. As well as sharing some techniques to get started, this discussion will cover some of the struggles and anxieties that artists might have around making work. In particular, how the role of artist might conflict with that of wife, mother, teacher, or carer, prompting us to ask, how do we make space for our art when there are so many expectations put upon us? How can we use the richness of the female experience to inform our artistic practice? And how is this class of identities and expectations being re-evaluated during the COVID-19 crisis? These are all issues we invite you to consider as you listen along to Jody, Abigail and Jen as they share their stories and as you begin to reignite your creative practice.
All right. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Okay.
Good.
Sorry, I was muted.
No, that's all right. We're here today to have a conversation a little bit about ourselves as artists, makers, mothers, creators. And we have all come together through our connection with the Feather Dusting and Future Lusting exhibition. So I'm going to begin today. My name is Jody Boyer, and I'm an artist, art teacher, and faculty in studio art in Omaha, Nebraska. And I got involved in this experience through seeing a posting on Instagram with the title Feather Dusting and Future Lusting. And I was making some work in my kitchen at home because I was social distancing, self-isolating because of COVID. And I reached out to participate in this exhibition, in this experience. So a little bit about myself. I've been making work for about 20 years. I'm a mother and a teacher, and I'm always balancing, and an artist, and I'm always balancing these three different spaces or lives that I have. And this call spoke to me because I was loving and hating being in my house all the time with all of my different lives at once. So my artist life, my teacher life, my mother life. And so I reached out to participate. See, what else can I share about myself at this point? So what I thought I'd do is start by sharing some of the work that I was making and shared with the collective. Are you seeing an ice cube of violets? You are?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So I was doing two bodies of work when this call came out. One body of work was kind of reenacting artworks from the perspective of being an artist teacher for my art teacher communities. And then the other body of work is work that was made from foraged items that I found in our neighborhood and in my kitchen, because I had limited resources and I was starting to think a little bit differently about materiality and what I could make. So this is one of the first pieces that I made. And this is violets that I gathered for making violet syrup, a foraged food. And I was really fascinated with this idea of being frozen in time and the way I felt frozen in my life here in my home with all of these different identities and just the pressures of COVID. So I started experimenting with food in my kitchen as an art form and a sculptural form. So this is one of the first pieces that I made. And then I kind of kept pushing that idea. This is my Instagram. I started working with food coloring and ice and the changes in the states of matter that could happen if I manipulated that water with different kind of additives. Here I'm manipulating it with rock salt. and kind of documenting those changes through time with this form as kind of a symbol for my kind of inner life and my experience as an artist, maker, mother. So, and then I kind of kept pushing this idea, and this is one of the last pieces I made in May before I went into another kind of framework. And this is actually pineapple weed, which is has a relationship to chamomile, and it can act as like a calming plant to you if you make a tea out of it. So I started making these kind of abstract still lives, and documenting their process of kind of decay when they were thawing out and falling apart. So this work kind of connects to all of my different identities and kind of amalgamates it together. And I felt like this was the work that I could most honestly share within the context of feather dusting, just putting together all of these different identities and in my role as a maker. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Jody, about the sort of conceptual thinking. You're talking about the weed, this last piece, the pineapple weed, and this sort of dying and decaying. So I'm intrigued at the sort of levels of connection. So obviously this, you know, work in your kitchen, the foodstuffs has led to this work, but does every element of the work connect to that, or was that a sort of springboard of the circumstances for you making this work?
I think the circumstances kind of resulted in these discoveries, and you know, I froze the violets at first because I didn't have time to actually use them before they would go bad, and so I froze them out of necessity. And then this object that came out of the freezer was so beautiful that I was moved to create sculpture out of it. And then I just started playing with this ice and water, really as a metaphor for change and time and being frozen. And then the freezing of the plant, the decay was a big part of it, because I felt like, you know, there's this whole nother level of capturing the abject that's in there, right? Like if you've read, I'm going to say her name wrong and sound like an idiot, but Julie Kristeva, who's written a lot about the abject and how we have this, you know, desire for the beautiful and this repulsion from the ugly. But so much of motherhood is beautiful and ugly. So much of being a female is beautiful and ugly. You know, like my second birth was a trauma. My son and I almost died, and there was a lot of beauty in it, but there was a lot of just disgustingness. And so how do I, as an artist, kind of utilize that rather than being scared of that, and put that all together in a work of art? And I really like objects. I'm really fascinated with objectness. You know, I have all my objects all around me here, but and also what's ephemeral, right? We're all ephemeral. And I think the COVID really has heightened that for me as a artist, teacher, maker, mother. You know, I'm hyper aware of how ephemeral everything is, you know. So I was trying to get at that.
Have you ever made art with ice before?
That's a great question. I made a piece as part of my response works. And it was a piece responding to another piece of art. And I don't have a picture of it. I'm not that prepared, but it was just a passing idea that manifested in this thing I did in April, where I made myself make a response artwork every single day for the 30 days of April. And I had gotten all this positive feedback from my Facebook community because I was posting them on Facebook and in my Nebraska Art Teacher Association group. And I'd gotten so much positive feedback about this ice cube sculpture that I made. But I was like, oh, what else could I do with this materiality, right? But before that, no. And I hadn't really ever made anything with food. I'd made a lot of things with botanicals before, but not this particular strategy.
It's very beautiful, Jody. I'm really enjoying looking at this pineapple weed piece. It's gorgeous.
What's it in? What's the glass? Is that glass that it's in?
The bottom piece is an old 70s like goblet that I had around the house and turned upside down.
I see.
And this is all ice. And I took for each one of these pieces, I took somewhere like 300-400 photographs over the course of a day as it sat there and melted. I drove my family nuts. Like, Mom, you have a studio in the garage. Why do you have to do this in the kitchen too? I'm like, because your mother is an artist and you're going to be thankful when you grow up that you got to witness this.
Exactly. How lucky was he? I think it's really interesting what you're talking about, sort of the ugliness and the beauty of motherhood and indeed being a woman. And it reminded me of, I was researching, I came across an artist and I came across the gallery that they were with in Australia. And I read all the information about all the artists. There are probably about 20 women, 17 male artists with this gallery. And just sort of reading about each one's work, I noticed quite a distinction between women's work conceptually and men's work, which I'm sure someone could bash me down for, but from that collection, and the work made by women, it wasn't particularly that it was sort of all feminist, but that engaging with people, with society, with being a woman, as opposed to a lot of the male artists were dealing with much more sort of abstract concepts of space and dimensions and what have you. And I kind of thought, well, we have so much to draw on, as you say, ugly and beauty. We bleed, we have children or don't manage to have children or don't want to have children. There's so much for us to explore and draw on, that it doesn't say that we have to be addressing that, but I think it's just so interesting you saying that the richness in a way of what we have in our lives as women.
Yeah, and I think for me, the isolation of being in this single space has made me become so much more aware of the interconnectedness of all of that. Whereas before, when I have two children, and when I had my first child, it's like, I'm a mom over here, I'm an artist here, I'm a faculty member over here. And I really was very separatist, those identities are very separatist. And I think, with my second child, it became more of a mesh or gears working together. But I think being in this house and just in this moment and having just constantly existentially thinking about who, where, what, why, has brought that more to the forefront for me. And so that's why this particular call, this particular framework was so intriguing to me. Is because this language that the curators came up with to talk about these two things and two exhibitions was almost, kind of addressing things that were going on with me. And I felt so drawn to it. So I was just so excited to be part of the conversation.
Me too.
Cool.
Abby, would you like to go next?
Okay, well, thanks, Jody. My mind is thinking about all the things you've been saying. How did I get involved with this? I think out of the three of us, I already knew Kat and Rosa. We were all master's students at the same time, and I responded to a call out for one of their curated project exhibitions, and met them there. But in terms of COVID times, it was quite odd because actually I've kind of stopped wanting to make work. And I am a mother, but my children are now grown up, they're young adults. And so I don't have those domestic demands on me in this time. And for me, it's been a great break. I feel like I've been striving with those identities, with working, with needing to earn money, being creative, and actually it's kind of been great to stop. I had a huge amount of things set up that would have been happening across March, April, May, and when I look back at the schedule, it would have been punishing and I wouldn't have enjoyed it. So in a sense, what's been great for me, and I'm very lucky to live in a nice house with a big garden, is that I can stop and reflect and actually think, you know what, you don't have to be driving and pushing all the time to achieve, to kind of slow down a bit. So that's been useful for me. And so the piece of work that I made is actually a poem, but I'm gonna come to the poem later, because what I want to share with you is my story to where I am now. I'm calling myself a visual artist. That's not my first profession, if you like. I'm not sure if I can call it a profession as yet, but I trained as a dancer in contemporary dance, and I went on to still am, a costume designer. I'm in UK London, by the way, I should add that. And I worked as a costume designer and worked in higher education as a lecturer and then course leader up until 2017. Now, for a long time, all my contemporaries were doing masters, and I was kind of like, and it seemed to be that, oh, you have to do a master's, that's what you have to do to be anyone. And those kind of things always get my back up. So I don't do anything to be anyone. I do it because I want to do it. So I was very like, I don't want to do a master's, that's not for me. Maybe when I'm grown up, I'll do a master's. And then I actually came across a course probably about 7 years ago now. I was going to a degree show at a college local to me, and discovered this master's called Designer Maker, Visual Arts Designer Maker. And I went, this is for me. This is what I want to do. So it was on the back burner for a few years while children grew up and became independent, and I paid off debts and started saving. And I'd actually told my faculty, where I had a full-time job, that I wanted to go part-time in 2018 to do this course. It was a 2-year part-time MA. And in that year leading up to that, we went through horrible revalidating and restructuring, and to cut a long story short, I took redundancy. So I was able to start my master's living off my redundancy and doing a part-time course full-time, which was absolutely brilliant. Because what I also discovered when I finished this horrible year was that a lot of what I was struggling with in terms of my physical and emotional well-being wasn't just going through a horrible, stressful situation. It was that I was in menopause, in perimenopause, so still having my periods, but going into significant hormonal change, I think is what they call it. So life was all going all over the place. So when I'd written my proposal for my master's, kind of the year before that, because I applied a year in advance so I could have my place, I could put it on hold while my college got their head around me going part-time. And what I was looking at was my question was, what happens next? So having worked in performing arts and education for all those years, I've worked as a collaborator. And what was really exciting about this course, and now I would say, I've always been a designer maker since a very small child, was what work would I make if I'm the lead artist, if I'm the lead creative? The ideas are coming from me rather than me responding to another person's creative concept. And in sort of searching to begin to address what that might be, I took myself right back to my earliest creative experience, because I've always danced, I've always dressed up, I've always made things. I was very fortunate to have a mother who was very creative with us as children, and then as we grew up, she explored sort of arts and crafts more. But I particularly remember, and I'm going to show you images at the end because otherwise I'll break my flow of storytelling. I remember at the age of 6, she picked fuchsia flowers, which for those of you that don't know, I will show a picture in a minute, is a flower that sort of has quite a long sort of body to it, and then petals that curl up, and then like an underskirt and stamens that come down. And she showed me how to tie 2 sticks together and to put them through the middle of the flower to make a dancing doll. And she gave me a wooden box that probably had buttons in it that opened out to make a stage. And so we made those dancing dolls. And those were my first costume designs. Those were my first dancers. And so kind of tracing back this journey of, what's my earliest memory of designing and making, that was it. And then it's, as I say, gone through a whole lifetime to this point. So I was thinking that my proposal was going to be about memories and exploring, and going back to ceramic. I loved doing ceramic. I was very lucky to do ceramic O-level at school, and it was a material that I really enjoyed. Anyway, so I started my master's course exploring these ideas, and then kind of, revisiting that idea of what happens next. It's like, well, what happens next is what's happening now. I'm in menopause. Do I want to separate? Can I separate what I'm going through on a daily, hourly basis of physical and emotional roller coaster? Can I put that to one side and think about designing and making in another way? And it was like, no. So I very quickly sort of began to explore how I wanted to express the experience I was going through designing and making. And I started by, I wanted to cast parts of my body. I discovered a wonderful material called jesmonite, which is an acrylic-based plaster. So you work by using silicon to take a cast, body silicon to take a cast from the body, and then you build a mudrock case to support it, and then you build it up by painting in layers of jesmonite. And then when you peel away the silicon, every pore, every wrinkle, every detail is captured most fantastically. So that very much became my material. And then it was sort of thinking about, which bits of the body, how I was using the body, and what I was wanting to say. And I sort of started with sort of head, breasts, belly. There's sort of key parts of being a woman, and the fact that it's the hypothalamus in the brain which is controlling or triggers the release of estrogen. Of course, that's all going. So I was very much exploring science, alternative and conventional treatments, and other women's stories. And language, I've always enjoyed language, and my father writes poems, and so I've, it's something I've sort of played around with. But at one point I was sitting on my back doorstep feeling absolutely terrible and saying to myself, I feel like I'm dying, which was I didn't know where this came from, and that's how I felt. And it was quite a long time before I even told my partner that, because it was quite a shocking thing to say. And one day I was doing some research and looking for what other women were talking about in their experiences, and came across some chat forums. They're mostly American, actually. And I discovered other women using exactly the same language, saying, I feel like I'm dying. And it was such an enormous relief, but also extraordinary that where this shared use of this language came from. So I've made pieces of work using sort of quotes and references from other women's stories. So that's very important to me. That's not just about my story, that I'm engaging with other women. So I think at this point, I'm going to read you my poem. I think that makes sense to do that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I'm not going to screen share it. I'm just going to read it to you, because now the poem will sort of make sense, and then I'll give you the context of it with some images about other things.
Sounds good.
So here we go. What's for dinner? I grew up in a household where the pot boiling on the cooker was as likely to be dye for freshly spun wool as it was for dinner. My brothers and I baked cakes, made beading looms, collected firewood and rowan berries to make wine and necklaces. I grew up. My home is my studio, my creativity the pleasure of a freshly vacuumed carpet, a clean and shiny kitchen floor. Sometimes I don't feel like making. Sometimes I don't feel like cleaning. Both are my choice, my responsibility to others, to myself. So is this privilege or earned? I am poor in material financial wealth, rich in much else. My domesticity is only servitude to myself, making my home my safe place where I can be creative, exploring how to expose myself. Yes, I am privileged to have a studio in my home, but in lockdown, I can take a break from driving, striving to be a successful woman. For now, I can just be me. I don't feel like making. I feel like baking, gardening, no judgment, some peace. Then the call of the open call focuses the mind, a rekindled light to share myself, my thoughts, by making now in words. That kind of tells you more of my story, and you know where I've come to in lockdown at this time. As I said, I'm really lucky that I have a studio in the basement. So for me, completely different from Jody. I've never really felt this tension between my creativity and my domesticity, because it's all happened. A lot of it happens in the same space. You know, the kids got put to bed, back to the studio, work all night. One of us get up and take them to school, and the other one can lie in. And the children, like you were saying earlier, Jody, being around and seeing everything that's going on. So they've grown up with that, dragged off to rehearsal during school holidays and all that sort of thing. So, so for me, it was a very different approach. And in fact, when the call came, because I was in this mode of actually, you know what, I don't, you know, great, I can stop. I'm not in the mood for making. I really didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until about a week before the deadline. I was like, I have to submit. You know, I know Kat and Rosa, and I want to support them, and I should. So that's when I actually just started writing. I'd written a poem for another exhibition about a month before, but I just started writing down what I was thinking about in relation to the feather dusting, and then was like, oh, actually I can craft this into a poem. So, so I feel I've taken rather a long time. I'm going to show you my images now. Okay, so here are my fuchsia flower dolls in the box that my mum pulled out for me when I was 6, that I still have. So that's what they look like. This is some of the early casting work I did. And this was actually, when I say I did, my partner, long-suffering Menno and artistic partner now, does the slapping onto the silicone, because obviously I can't do it. And there's a third to this piece, which is my belly. And these were all done at 90 degrees. So the silicone went on vertical, and then I leant forward because I wanted this sense of falling, which of course is what the estrogen is doing. And being honest about my body. This is another point where I actually started dancing, performing, and this video was of me sort of going through the motions of what a night disturbed by hot sweats and night sweats and hot flushes. And then this was actually projected onto some sculpture. So I sort of moved into multimedia. So, and again, coming back to my, my roots as a dancer, and suddenly going, actually, you know what, I can perform, because I have no qualms about my body now. It is what it is. And none of that feeling the need to conform to expectations physically as a dancer and a performer. In my kitchen. So here we go. Here's probably one of the most ambitious casts. That's my partner Greg, because my studio wasn't big enough to do this one. So yeah, so comedied the kitchen for an afternoon. Got covered in silicone. In fact, I think if I reduce myself, you can actually see there's the hand of my son who still lives at home. He got roped in to help out as well. And this is the result. So I mixed colour into the jesmonite, and then I used polish to work it up. This piece is called Roadkill, which again comes from shared language of me saying I feel like I've been hit by a bus by the menopause. I was kind of, cruising along, doing my life, and then bam, all this disruption. And other women talking about being hit by a truck or hit by a ton of bricks. So this piece is called Roadkill. And then alongside making this was for one of my final pieces for my masters. Out of a crazy evening of showing some work and drinking wine, and somebody was saying that some of the work I was making was beautiful and cathartic. And I was like, it's not supposed to be beautiful and cathartic. And I turned to my partner, who's a musician, and said, I want to make a punk song called Fuck the Menopause. So we did. And there's myself with two girlfriends. You can watch it on YouTube, and it's informative. It tells you about the symptoms, and it's also cathartic and saying, you know what, I'm not dead yet. This is pretty unpleasant experience, but it's all part of being a woman.
It's hilarious. I recommend it.
This is the last piece I made before COVID hit, which is called Life Crumpled. And the next piece I was going to make was actually working with just the head section of this silicone, and because this is the first time I'd explored painting acrylic into the silicone before building the jesmonite in. So I was going to carry on exploring that with colour in just the headpiece. And that's still waiting to happen. And this is what happened. There's the poem on the table with all the stuff where I was trying to figure out how I was going to do the next piece, which will happen when it's supposed to happen. There you go, that's me. Thank you very much for listening. Anybody got any questions for me?
Well, Abby, I think there's such a beautiful braveness to that work that you're doing, and putting, talking about menopause, but then also, being willing to so intimately share the body in transition and using your own body in that way. And all of the things that emerge from that kind of sharing, just related, unrelated. Just 2 or 3 days ago, I posted this picture of myself on my Facebook I'm trying to jog to stay healthy. I'm not a jogger, but you can't see it very well right now, but I've started to get melasma, which is a menopausal pigment issue, right? And so I put up this picture and was showing how my melasma is increasing because I'm outside so much. And I had like 5 of my female friends privately text me in Facebook about having that themselves and the different things that they're doing with it, because it's so hard. This is just pigment on my face, but it also looks like I'm sure my middle schoolers are going to tell me that I have dirt on my forehead, right? So there's this culture of what our exteriors are supposed to be, right? And then how we're supposed to talk about it or not talk about it, right? I mean, nobody's supposed to talk about menopause, right? Like, it feels like it's a thing that's not supposed to be talked about, but it really should be. It's just this natural thing that's happening to over 50% of the human population, and it's really risky and brave of you to venture that way, I think.
Thank you. I mean, it doesn't feel brave, and it's kind of quite surprising when people say that, but thank you. I mean, I think certainly in terms of showing the body, because I come from that dance background, that you're rolling around with your head in your crutch and what have you, that there's that sort of sense of kind of distanced from the physical self when put on public display. So that if I hadn't been a dancer, it probably would be quite different, but that's something I'm very in tune with, looking at bodies and in that way. But in terms of talking about it, absolutely, I consider myself an activist artist, and that's my mission, is let's get people talking about it, and the way I can do that is through my creativity. And it helps. It really helps. It means there's a purpose to this horrible thing that's, been going on for like 6 years now, So, and yeah.
Yeah, well, these things feel lonely, right? Unless we articulate what's going on for ourselves and we see other people having our experiences reflected in what they're doing. So yeah, it's so nice to have both you and Jody talk about what's going on for you, because I definitely see myself in both of what you guys have been, thinking about. I'm only 44, but perimenopause seems to be knocking on my door as well. Same for you, Jody, right? You're 44.
I'm 44, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was lucky, a late bloomer. It didn't really start till, 50. So, but Jen, tell us, because I think what's so interesting about us, and of course we've met before this recorded session, is our different takes on the situation and the call, and the notion of being a domestic goddess, as well as everything else that we wonderful women are.
Yeah, right. So domestic goddess. Well, okay. So hi, I'm Jen. I found out about the Cleo Collective, and I don't know if that's quite how I say it, call through a friend of mine who's a professional artist. It's tough to call myself an artist. I went to art school is what I say. I'm comfortable saying I went to art school. I feel less comfortable saying I'm an artist. But I guess I am, because I make art and I do it, and I've been doing it for a while. I'd say like the identities I'm most comfortable sharing with people are like, I'm a mother and I'm a teacher, and I happen to be an art teacher. I teach high school animation and film and sometimes art. And yeah, COVID happened, the pandemic happened, and my identity as a teacher kind of disappeared. I'm a half-time teacher, but it occupies enough of my identity that having it disappear completely was like my world collapsing in on itself. Like all I was a mother and a wife and a homemaker. And I have two kids. I have an 8-year-old and I have a 4-year-old, and they were both home with me, and I'm not great at having both kids at home with me. I don't know, for many reasons. I mean, I'm an only child. I had a difficult childhood, and being with the dynamic of the two kids is just pretty consistently overwhelming for me. After Rowan was born, I had some pretty extreme postpartum anxiety. And, even though she's 8 and my son is 4, it's sort of like it doesn't go away. It's like, I guess like anxiety is kind of a new mental health thing, in that it's not new as a thing we experience, but new as something medicated and something that we talk about. in our culture. So I think I had anxiety as a kid. Like, I think, you know, I didn't have a, like I say, I didn't have a great childhood, and being stuck in the home with my kids made me feel like I was sort of stuck at home again, like when I was a kid and stuck in not a good situation. And having to like take care of the housework, and I'm not like, I don't feel like I'm a very good mother, because like I am sometimes for sure, but I have an idea about myself, like I kind of struggle with the role of a mother. Because it's like everybody struggles with the role of a mother. It's a, you know, it's a very difficult role. And, but I personally like get overwhelmed a lot and feel a lot of anxiety. And when I'm at home stuck in that role, it's just really heightened. So I was pretty miserable at the beginning of the pandemic. And I decided to express that by doing a playful series. So this is my 1950s housewife getup. I kind of love the retro look. And yeah, so took a look at referenced 1950s Happy Housewife ads and dressed up in the part and just did a photo shoot. You know, I was having a good day during the pandemic with my kids at home. And my good day was I had done the housework, and in fact, I'd even vacuumed the stairs. And at the end of this good day, I was like, so a good day for me is when I act like a 1950s housewife. Like, that's when I feel like a good mother, is when I vacuum the stairs. And like, I went to art school and in the mid to late 90s and studied feminism and art history. And that's like, and I identify as a feminist, but how can I think of myself as a feminist if that is what I think of a good mother as? A 1950s housewife who takes care of, you know, the stairs. So that felt like a big deal to reckon with that. So I've been making work before COVID. I'd been making work situated in the home. So here's me painting in my kitchen. This is my studio, which is not a studio. Where I'm painting is where we prepare food. I happen to be painting a ketchup bottle. I'll show you the painting. So this is my website. I made a website of my art. So this year I did a 30-day project where I was drawing and painting objects around my house and including a quote from my son. Generally, he's 4, so he says a lot of hilarious things. My 8-year-old, not as much anymore. So it says, "Don't put your hand in the ketchup and rub it all over the table." Why? What do you mean, why? Ben, don't give Sam ketchup. Okay. I have a lot of ketchup, see? Yes, but do you have trouble eating it properly? No. Right. So maybe you don't need the tone. But I did 30 days of this kind of thing. And it's the first time I ever did any work that was kind of situated in this new identity. And I guess even though I did feminism and art history in school, I didn't really think it was valid. I don't know why I didn't do work from like this very, within the home about what is going on right now. It takes a lot of encouragement to feel like this stuff is valid as art. The Cleo Collective's show, Feather Dusting, Future Lusting, was, one more kind of validation that it is actually something that's worthy of art, of calling it art. But, the reason I did it at all was I got in touch with this woman her name's Penny Lane Shen, and she's an artist consultant. And I heard her on this Thrive Talks podcast. And can you all see her?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In Vancouver, there's a kind of cool, I don't even know how to explain it, but Thrive is a place where women artists get together and support each other's work. And I haven't done it, but I intend to sometime. And Penny Lane is somebody who's been attached to them. And she's an artist consultant. And what that means is, for me, I heard her on this Thrive Talks podcast, and she said that she likes meeting with people who are at the early stage of their career, or they're at a crossroads. And that was me. I had work that I had done before that didn't have anything to do with motherhood. And then I was within this identity of motherhood and within the realities of what motherhood takes from you. And so I decided to meet with her, and she just said, let's do a 30-day project based in drawing and situated within the home. Like, you don't have to be someone you're not. And so that I really need a lot of validation and encouragement to pursue these things. And that's how it started, and that's how I've gotten back into it. And it's led to like this, just making these connections over Instagram. Artist Mother podcast was something we talked about the last time, Jody. I'm supposed to be on an artist in residence program in Toronto right now, called Mothra, but because of COVID, it didn't happen. I was going to bring Sam, and we were going to do art stuff, and I'm sorry, it isn't happening. So it's been really great to connect with other mother artists through Instagram and through this opportunity, and feel like what I'm really focused on right now is something that a lot of us are focused on right now. Making it really clear that we haven't come as far as we thought we had, in terms of what mothers have to deal with all the time.
Jen, can you show us your drawings again on your website?
Sure.
In listening to you, I was reflecting back to a conversation we had the last time we met, and you talked about being situated within this context of motherhood. And, my motherhood is, I have a 17-year-old and an 8-year-old. And when I gave birth to my 17-year-old, I didn't even feel like there was a space to validly talk about these things as an artist. It was like I had to make art, and then I had to sit on the office floor and breastfeed, and then I had to give the baby to the spouse while I went and taught, but not acknowledging the fact that one of my boobs was a C size and the other one was an E size, because I didn't have a chance to let down the other one, right? It was just like, this is not happening. I am a studio faculty and not, and I think the world continues to change, and that's what's so exciting, is that there's now spaces for this dialogue to happen and for the validity of these stories to be told, and for female artists who choose motherhood to be able to make work about that. When you were reading the ketchup bottle one, it was like, and you said, is the tone not important? The tone is so important, because so many women have been in that exact position, right? And just the banality of that experience, along with the absurdity of it, and the beauty of the ketchup bottle, right? It's like, this is where we're at. This ketchup bottle symbolizes so much, Yeah. And to capture that, you've captured that so beautifully. I'm just really excited for your process of making. And honestly, I'm going to be super revealing. I'm also a little jealous because my kids aren't there anymore. And I reflect back and I'm like, oh, I wish I had made work about how my first child would take the diaper off and pee on the toys to mark the toys, like this is what we dealt with for like 2 months. Like, I'm trying to potty train and then I'm like, oh God, I got to run in and teach at the university. Do I smell like pee? I don't know. It's just these things.
It's so hilarious and so horrible. And so it's so hilarious. And, it makes it more hilarious when you get to share it, I think. Like, yeah, what's been kind of neat about that 30-day one is I would post it to Instagram or to Facebook, and friends who aren't from the art world would just totally relate to it. And that's kind of great. It's just, I make people laugh, and that's good. It felt good.
Jen, do you think that you might explore making work that's about your sort of emotional experiences of motherhood, or as you talked about being stuck back in the home, which took you back to thinking about your own childhood? Do you think this is something you might explore in future work as you gain confidence in saying you are an artist?
Yeah, when I was in art school, I did a lot of, like what Jody said, abject type work. I might just turn this off. I'll stop share. One of my projects was about cockroaches. I did 6-foot cockroaches on Mylar. They were really visceral. And I guess I talk about that right now because I feel like, yeah, the darker kind of side of, motherhood is definitely something I will explore. I will be exploring, yeah. And even what you're talking about with the body and menopause, I feel like that's something that, you doing casts of your body, I actually wanted to do a cast of my chest. So yeah. It's hard to do kind of that. It was kind of neat to see that your son had done that with you, because it's kind of, I feel like it's hard to do stuff that shows the darker side to my kids. here's mama rage. Like even showing my kids something like this, which feels like a real self-portrait. It's like, yeah, that's me.
Right.
It's funny, but it's also like angry. Yeah, I have to figure out how to feel comfortable, since my studio is in my home, to feel comfortable showing that stuff. You know, having a 4-year-old he's scared by that picture.
But in a way, and I think, you know, so you're lucky that they're young enough to kind of get them in tune with all this going on. It's the conversation. It's exactly the same as having conversations about, oh, your mum's on her period. You know, it's like kids need to grow up knowing that women bleed. It's what we do. You know, we all shit, we all piss, we all sweat, and women also bleed. It's you know, if people don't acknowledge that we're peeing and pooing, all of us, which of course with children, you know, you've got that, you're dealing with them doing that. So already the door is open for the conversation to say, well, mummy also does this, and that's related to how I end up having you. And so I suppose, you know, the fact that you're saying, well, if you've been angry with your child, and we do all lose our tempers now and again and then berate ourselves for being a bad mum, well, that's in a way part of the reconciliation with the child, is like, I'm really sorry I got angry, you know, I'm just a bit tired, there's a lot going on. It doesn't mean that they weren't shit and didn't deserve someone having a go, but it's, I think that's one of the things I learned, fundamental things I learned through becoming a mother, was to initiate the conversation by saying, I'm sorry that happened. You know, I'm not sorry I was cross with you because you were out of order, but I'm sorry that happened because that wasn't the best way for us to sort out the fact that you shouldn't have done that. And, you know, so for me, I suppose it's always that thing about just talking. And that's why for me, it's quite easy now to talk about menopause, because it's just what happens, you know, in the same way with mental health, you know. And I think also having young people around, that the young people are so good here in London anyway, so good at talking about mental health with each other, and so good about talking about their you know, gender issues and coming out and all of that, that they're a real lesson to us, that, you know, they all hug and they all talk and they share their dark stuff, that we should learn from them. It's like, it's good to talk, just say it, just have it out.
I think it's so nice that, you know, like definitely conversations, and I can have conversations about being angry with my kids for sure, because that's something that I guess I wish I had as a kid. But I think, you know, the fact that you're sharing about menopause, for example, like I need to see you do it so that I can feel like it's okay. Like, you know, and even the fact that you said, have a conversation, you know, like I want somebody who's done it before to say to me, this is okay to talk about. 'Cause like, yeah, my parents didn't do that. But I would really, I really appreciate just even this conversation where you're saying, you know, like you can have we have conversations about pooing and peeing and stuff. Have I had a conversation with my kids about, you know, like why I'm screaming at them because it's the day before my period? No, I have not.
Get it out there.
I think I may.
Oh, mummy. Oh.
What are these things? They play with tampons, but but we haven't had the conversation.
I think, and when we were first, when Clear Collective asked us to do this, and I think early stages we were thinking about maybe running some kind of workshop where we could sort of give material and ideas for other people how they might move forward with their creativity when they're stuck, whether it's because of COVID or other reasons. And one of the exercises that I use in all sorts of workshops, all sorts of contexts, and that's drawing to music. So giving people different types of music with different energies, as a way of mark making in response to emotional feelings. So rather than sort of, you know, I'm not an art therapist, and I don't pertain to be, but but it's about saying, well, you know, how does this music make you feel? Does it make you feel, which is some of the Beethoven's string quartets that my dad loves to play, and they just, I mean, you know, I might not even be anywhere near premenstrual, but you know, they just make me feel, I'm like, just turn that off. You know, or is it something that's really lovely and calming? And so it's about engaging your emotions and your physicality with then expressing that onto paper, and that how, as one might transition to making physical work in whatever material is your bent, that tapping into that. And I know at one point when I was starting the casting, it became very sort of like, well, I cast my belly because that's about, you know, being a woman, blah, blah, blah. And then I actually went to a really fantastic drawing workshop. I can't remember what it was about sketchbook drawing. And because I didn't go to art school, I went to dance school. I've never felt confident about drawing ever. I'm quite phobic about it. And so this was about how to free up your drawing in terms of putting ideas on paper, ideas of things that are in your head, as opposed to the drawing being the artwork. And that talked about movement, which of course is, you know, deeply embedded in everything that I do, is that physicality. And I sort of started drawing flowing lines, and it's like, oh yeah, movement. Everything's got to have movement. And then I started making work that was about capturing movement in stillness. So not just about capturing the emotional and physical experience of menopause, but actually within the work itself. So like a snapshot, you know, like taking a photograph of a dancer leaping, you caught that moment. So that really changed the way that I was sculpting. So I would take we took a cast of half of my body lying on my side, and rather than just casting the half body and going, that's the work, I then started drawing shapes into it, and then just casting those shapes. So it sort of started taking a different way forward of capturing more within it. And that came back to that sense, do you know what I mean? I could direct that to follow that path back to this idea of expressing emotion by mark making on paper or with your body in space. Sorry, I've rambled a bit then. I do get a bit rambly. But
no,
I
think you did a really nice job of sort of connecting it to a way to close our dialogue, which is how do you start, right? And that strategy of creating a musical space that lets you use that emotion to making work, you know, is and I really liked what you said about following the path of where that takes you, which kind of connects to what you were talking about, Jen, with this experience you had with the Thrive Talk Penny Lane consultant. You know, she helped you create validity in that daily action, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, that's what I have found has been very helpful, is creating a particular space, whether it be a mental space, a conceptual space, or a physical space, and forcing my commitment to that path, right? Whereas when I was younger, I would have an idea and then I would just let it float away. And I think for me, you know, with the food and frozen works, it was about making this commitment to doing it, to see where it would go. And I think that's the hardest part for me in the balancing, is that, you know, you have all these expectations coming at you, and then you have all these responsibilities simultaneously. And how do you carve out that space, mental, conceptual, physical, emotional, that allows you to continue to be an artist maker with all of that exchange and identities, internal and external, you know? Do either of you have anything that you feel is like a, what do they say, the golden nugget that helps?
Deadlines are wonderful things. As I said, I knew about the Cleo, the call, and it was kind of floating around in the back of my mind, but it was always something else to do. And then it was like, it's a week, I have to. Do you know what I mean? I have to support these women in the way that, we've engaged already. I can't just kind of go, oh, I didn't fancy it. It's like, no. So deadlines are wonderful things. And whether you set them for yourself, not necessarily in terms of, I'm doing a short online course at the moment about creativity, health and well-being, and I want to get it finished by the end of July, and if I don't set myself that deadline, then it's very easy to kind of, I'm a bit tired, I can't be bothered to go on and do another module, it's sort of, deadlines.
The 30-day challenge was the thing that really got me going. It wasn't supposed to be every single day necessarily. It could be 30 pieces, but they had to be pretty close together. And I think I'm going to keep doing that kind of thing, is 30-day challenges, and posting to Instagram, which, it depends on the nature of the work, how comfortable I might feel with that, especially at the beginning. Like that 30-day challenge with the drawings, my first drawings I hated, and I was like, I said that. So yeah, I do find the Instagram thing is helpful, and the 30-day challenge has been helpful.
I would love to see a 28-day challenge of you drawing self-portraits, Jen.
You're smart.
There you go. I've set you a challenge.
Or if you're in menopause, sometimes it's the 50-day challenge while you sit and figure out if it's...
Yeah, it's more like the 23-day challenge lately, guys.
Oh, that's all right. Only 23 portraits to draw then. I think Jen should set Jody a challenge and Jody should set me one, and we should reconvene and see what's happened in
And that I think yes, and I think that connects to this larger unspoken phenomena that is happening right here, which is that you have to create a community. In all honesty, in my physical community of Omaha, Nebraska, I have very few friends who are mothers and artists who push their art career to the caliber that I want for myself. And so I'm very alone a lot of the time. And I think, venturing out into this larger network because of the 21st century technology we have, but also like the pressure of COVID forcing me to sort of expand my communities. It's so important for any artist to form a community that helps them have a dialogue and be accountable, offering that accountability to each other. So I'm really thankful for this space and this experience of connecting. I'm thinking and hoping that this becomes something beyond just this conversation, even though we're in 3 different countries in 3 different time zones.
That's the hardest part.
Yeah. But even that is fascinating, these different experiences of place and identity and what's happening. I just, it's all been really wonderful to have this conversation with you two. And
absolutely, couldn't agree more. It's been a pleasure and some really great sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, let's do it again. That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you for listening. For more information and links to past work by Jody, Abigail and Jen, please check out the description of this recording. This event forms part of the public programme of Feather Dusting Future Lusting, a digital exhibition hosted by Cleo Collective, launched in June 2020.